Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, be sure to drop your thoughts, feelings, and lessons in the comments below. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's get into it. My fiancée, Nia Calder, tried to turn my love into a competition by inviting her ex, Jalen Cross, to a family dinner and telling me, loud enough for everyone to hear, that I had to prove I was the better choice if I wanted to marry her. Here's how it happened. I met Nia at a retirement party in Silver Spring, Maryland. We were both black, both raised to take pride in keeping our word, and that familiarity made me lower my guard. The room was full of polite laughter and practiced smiles, the kind of work event where people talk about next steps like they are discussing weather. Nia stood near the bar in a cream blazer, hair pulled back, eyes alert. When we were introduced, she held my handshake a beat longer than expected, as if she was measuring my calm. I told her I ran operations for a distribution center in Landover. She said she managed properties in Bethesda and liked people who were consistent. We talked until the DJ packed up, and I left feeling like I'd met someone who valued steady love. The first few months felt steady. We had brunch in Columbia, late walks in Rockville, and quiet nights in my apartment in Hyattsville, where she liked to reorganize my shelves for flow. She talked about wanting peace, about being tired of loud relationships. I believed her because her voice stayed smooth even when she disagreed. She complimented my reliability, my patience, and my ability to stay grounded. I took those as signs of safety. I didn't realize she liked those traits because they made me easier to bend without making a scene. When she mentioned her ex the first time, she made him sound like a closed chapter. Jalen and I were together a long time, she said, smoothing a throw pillow. He was inconsistent. Big talk, little follow-through. I'm not going backwards. She said it with an eye roll that implied boredom. I didn't ask for details because I didn't want to be the man digging through someone's past. I wanted to be her future. That decision, to trust without asking, became the soft spot she pressed later. The first coincidence happened after brunch in Columbia. A black SUV parked close to my car, and a man stepped out with a confident walk and a bright watch catching the sun. Nia's expression shifted for half a second, then snapped back into place. "That's Jalen," she said lightly, like she was pointing out a street sign. Jalen spotted her and smiled, slow and knowing, and walked over like he belonged to whatever we were building. Nia didn't step back. She brightened. He hugged her with both arms and held on too long. Then he looked at me as if I were a new accessory. "So you're the new guy," he said. "Good for you." The words were polite, but the tone wasn't. Nia laughed softly, encouraging him, and said, "Jalen, stop." Not firmly, not with a boundary, just enough to keep him entertained. I introduced myself anyway, and kept my voice steady. Jalen nodded once and turned back to her, already dismissing me. On the drive home, Nia said, "See? Nothing. You're overthinking." After that, randomness became a pattern. Jalen appeared at an outdoor concert in National Harbor. He showed up at a new coffee shop in Tacoma Park the weekend we tried it. He was suddenly involved in a charity run in Alexandria. Nia insisted we attend. Each time, Nia shrugged and said the area was small. Each time, she looked a little too pleased when he arrived, like his presence confirmed something in her. I started to feel like I was living inside someone else's script, and the only role available to me was the man who stays calm. Then the comparisons started. At first, they were presented like jokes. Jalen would have found a quicker route, she said when traffic stalled near the Beltway. Jalen always remembered my coffee order, she said when I brought the wrong creamer. I adjusted because I thought that's what love looks like, listening, improving, showing effort. But the comparisons didn't stop once I improved. They escalated because the point wasn't for me to get it right. The point was for me to always be chasing. Nia's friends made it worse. They moved like a jury, meeting at the same rooftop spots in D.C., dressing for photos, speaking in coded compliments. Her closest friend, Celine Barron, called herself honest to a fault. Celine brought up Jalen in front of me as a hobby. "Remember when Jalen surprised you with that weekend trip?" she'd say to Nia, watching me for a reaction. Nia would smile as if the memory was sweet, then glance at me like she was checking whether I could handle it. I learned that in her world, My discomfort was entertainment. I tried setting boundaries like an adult. I told Nia I didn't want her ex around our relationship. I told her being compared was humiliating. She didn't explode. She stayed calm, which made it feel like I was the problem for having feelings. If you were secure, you wouldn't notice, she said. You're making it bigger than it is. She called my hurt insecurity and spoke about it like a flaw she was tolerating. When I insisted it mattered, she tilted her head and said, I can't marry a man who needs reassurance all the time. The engagement came fast, like she wanted to lock me in before I fully understood what was happening. One afternoon in a home goods store in Laurel, she picked up a set of plates and said, I'm ready for the next step. A month later, she was showing me rings and insisting we visit a jeweler in Tyson's Corner. I proposed near the water in Georgetown because I wanted the moment private. Nia accepted, smiling wide, and immediately texted her friends. That same night, Celine posted, she finally got what she deserved, as if love was a prize you earned through pressure. Wedding planning became another arena for tests. Nia wanted an Annapolis venue with a water view. She wanted a photographer whose price made my stomach tighten. She wanted a guest list that included people I'd never met but who needed to be there. When I suggested we split costs evenly, Nia said, a man who's serious provides. Then she added, casual and sharp, Jalen never hesitated when it came to spending time with me. I felt my face go hot, but I swallowed it because I kept thinking patience would lead to peace. My family noticed the weight on me. My older sister, Maribel, watched me at Sunday dinner in Bowie and asked why I looked like I hadn't slept. I tried to laugh it off. Maribel didn't laugh back. If someone makes you compete for respect, they don't respect you, she said. I defended Nia out of habit, calling her blunt, calling her ambitious. Maribel shook her head. Blunt isn't the same as cruel, she said. Cruel is intentional. I heard it, but I wasn't ready to believe it. Nia's criticism started reaching into everything. She judged my clothes. She called my hobbies basic. She said my friends were too simple. One night, she scrolled through her phone and showed me a photo of Jalen beside a rented sports car, city lights behind him. He knows how to present, she said. I need a man who matches me. My throat went tight. I asked, do you hear yourself? Nia smiled like I was being dramatic. I'm being honest, she said. Don't punish me for honesty. Jalen began texting her regularly, and Nia made sure I knew. She'd read messages aloud like they were entertainment. He said he misses my laugh, she'd say, smiling. He said no one gets me like he does. When I asked her to stop, she shrugged. I can't control what he feels. Then she'd look at me and add, but I can control who I choose, so stop acting like you're losing. She turned her loyalty into a prize and my dignity into a wager. I started waking up with anxiety, like my body knew what my pride refused to admit. The humiliations were rarely explosive. They were steady, public, and disguised as jokes. At a birthday dinner in Arlington, Celine asked Nia to rate who had better chemistry with her, me or Jalen. People laughed like it was a party game. Nia tapped her glass like she was thinking, drawing it out while everyone watched me. Jalen and I have history, she finally said. Kellen is stable. Stable. Like a couch you keep because it works. Everyone laughed again. I sat there smiling with my jaw tight, feeling my self-respect leak out one polite breath at a time. I suggested counseling because I wanted to fix what felt broken. I found a therapist in Greenbelt and asked Nia to come. She agreed once and spent the session charming the room. She talked about growth and communication and called me sensitive. When a therapist asked about Jalen, Nia smiled and said, he's just someone from my past. Kellen has a jealous streak. The therapist looked at me gently, like she could hear the imbalance, but Nia's calm performance made me sound like the problem. I left that office feeling smaller than when I walked in. My work started suffering. I missed a shipment window because I was distracted, checking my phone for messages from Nia, bracing for whatever new test might come. I snapped at a colleague and apologized because it felt like waking up inside someone else's body. My supervisor asked if everything at home was okay. I said I was tired. The truth was I lived in constant anticipation of disrespect. When you spend your days preparing for emotional impact, you don't have much left for anything else. Then Nia moved in, and I convinced myself it would stabilize things. She arrived with neatly labeled bins, scented candles, and a plan for my space. She rearranged my kitchen the first day and said she was improving the flow. 2 weeks later, she suggested a joint account to simplify wedding planning. I hesitated. She leaned against the counter, eyes cool. "If you're serious about marrying me, why are you acting like a roommate?" she asked. I opened the account, and the moment I did, I felt a quiet shift. My boundaries became ours, but her decisions stayed hers. She also began insisting we spend more time with her family. "They need to see you're consistent," she said, like I was on probation. Her aunt in Prince George's County adored Jalen, at least publicly. She spoke about him like he was a nephew, calling him that charismatic boy. Nia's cousin, Darnell, treated him like a celebrity. Every time we attended a gathering, someone found a reason to mention Jalen's name. I try to keep my posture calm. I try to be the man Nia demanded I be. But inside, I was living with a knot in my stomach that never loosened. One week, Nia asked me to take time off work for a small family dinner at Darnell's townhouse in Arlington. "It'll be good for you to feel included," she said, brushing lint from my jacket like she was preparing me for inspection. Something in her tone made my stomach tighten, but I went. The townhouse smelled like roasted chicken and expensive candles. People greeted Nia with warm affection and looked at me like a detail they needed to evaluate. I stayed polite. I shook hands. I smiled. I told myself to relax. Halfway through dinner, Jalen walked in like he belonged. He greeted the family with ease, hugged Nia's aunt, laughed with Darnell, and placed a bottle of wine on the counter as if he was offering tribute. My chest tightened. Nia didn't look surprised. She looked satisfied. Jalen sat across from me and talked about his projects in vague language that sounded impressive, but never landed on specifics. When he asked where I worked, he nodded with a thin smile, like he was humoring me. The room's energy shifted, and everyone pretended it was normal. Nia tapped her glass gently, smiling as if she was starting a toast. "Since everyone is here," she said, "I want to clear the air." Her voice was smooth, practiced. "Jalen and I have history," she continued, "and Kellen and I are engaged. Some people have concerns." She turned toward me, eyes bright. "So, Kellen, show them why you're the right choice." She paused, letting the words hang. Then she added, "I'm not marrying someone who can't handle pressure." The table went quiet. Everyone watched me like the dinner had turned into a trial. My ears rang. I looked at the faces around the table. Smiles, raised eyebrows, curious stares. Nobody looked uncomfortable on my behalf. They looked entertained. At that moment, the past year rearranged itself in my mind, like pieces finally snapping into place. The coincidences were not coincidences. The comparisons were not slips. Nia had built a system where I stayed off balance and kept proving myself. Jalen wasn't the problem. He was the tool. I felt my body want to argue, to defend, to beg for dignity in front of strangers. Then I realized begging was the point. I thanked Darnell for dinner and told everyone to enjoy their evening. My voice came out steady, almost calm. Nia's smile faltered, not from guilt, but from surprise that I wasn't playing along. As I walked toward the door, she said my name sharply. "Kellen, don't be dramatic." I turned back and said, "I'm not competing for basic respect." Jalen smirked like it was a game he expected me to lose. Nia's aunt muttered something about men being soft. I didn't respond. I left, stepped into the night air, and felt my lungs expand like they finally had room. Nia called while I drove home. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't apologize. "You embarrassed me," she said. I kept my eyes on the road. "You embarrassed us," I answered. Nia laughed, short and sharp. "You're acting like a victim," she said. When I stayed quiet, she changed tactics. "If you walk away over a joke, you were never husband material." Her words were designed to hook me, to pull me back by shame. I felt the familiar urge to explain, to fix. Then I heard my sister's voice in my head. "Cruel is intentional." I said, "Good night," and ended the call. That night, I sat in my dark kitchen and listened to the hum of the refrigerator. I replayed everything. The soft comparisons, the public jokes, the calm dismissal. I realized how much of myself I had been shrinking to keep her comfortable. I had mistaken endurance for love. In the quiet, I admitted a truth that hurt. Nia didn't want a partner. She wanted someone to manage and measure. And I had been working too hard to pass a test that never ended. I stared at the ring box on the counter, a symbol of something that was never going to be safe. In the morning, I did what I do when my life is unstable. I organized. Not revenge, not theatrics. An exit plan. I printed the lease for my apartment and read every page. There was an early termination clause with conditions I could meet if I acted quickly. I opened my banking app and exported statements, separating my contributions to the joint account from hers, line by line. I pulled up emails with the venue and vendors and highlighted which deposits were paid for my card. I started a folder, labeled and dated, because if I was leaving clean. When Nia came home that evening, she acted like the dinner never happened. She set her keys in a bowl by the door and said, "We need to talk about your attitude." She sat at the kitchen table, crossing her legs like she was ready to negotiate. I sat across from her and said, "We're done." She blinked once, then smiled slightly. "No," she said, calm and dismissive. "You're upset. You'll get over it." The certainty in her voice made my stomach flip. "I'm not upset," I said. "I'm finished." She scoffed and leaned back as if I was a child throwing a tantrum. "You'll be back," she said, like she'd already won. I didn't argue. I moved quietly. I opened a new account at a different bank branch in Baltimore County and redirected my direct deposit. I froze my credit, not because I wanted drama, but because shared households make access too easy. I transferred only the money I had personally deposited into the joint account, leaving a clear paper trail and sending an email summary with exact amounts and dates. I called the photographer and canceled the contract tied to my card, requesting written confirmation. I contacted the venue about deposits in my name, documenting everything. I did it all with calm hands and a tight throat. Nia only shifted when she realized I wasn't bluffing. She showed up during my lunch break, standing in my apartment doorway while I taped a box shut. "So this is what you're doing," she said, scanning the room. I nodded. She laughed. "You're really throwing away your future because you couldn't handle a little competition?" I answered, "It wasn't a competition. It was disrespectful." Nia stepped closer and lowered her voice. "You think you're better than me because you're stable," she said, mocking the word. "You're boring, Kellen. Jalen makes me feel alive." I stared at her, and the pain hit like a wave, but the clarity stayed. The hardest part wasn't packing. It was grieving the version of her I thought existed. I remember the early months when she asked questions and spoke about peace. I realized peace, to Nia, meant control. It meant everyone around her bending until she felt powerful. I moved into a smaller apartment in Towson, choosing a place with a short commute and no shared memories. I told my family the engagement was over. My mother's face tightened with concern, and she asked what happened. I said, "She turned my love into a contest." My mother nodded once, quiet and firm, like she understood more than I wanted to say. Nia didn't let the story die quietly. She called mutual friends and painted me as insecure, unstable, threatened by Jalen. Celine posted vague quotes about men who run when tested. People who barely knew me messaged for details, pretending concern while fishing for gossip. I blocked numbers. I avoided the places Nia liked. I chose privacy because I didn't want to be a storyline. Some nights, I wanted to send Nia a long message listing everything she did. I wanted her to understand. But I knew she'd twist it into proof I was emotional, then perform it for her friends. So I kept my silence and let that be my boundary. My body kept score even after I left. I woke up with my shoulders tight, as if I was still bracing for her voice. I started running again in the mornings along the trail near Lake Roland, not for a transformation, but to burn off the adrenaline that had lived in me for a year. I started therapy again, alone this time, in a small office in Towson where nobody could rewrite my words. I told the therapist about the calm cruelty, the public jokes, the constant tests. She didn't call me insecure. She called it emotional abuse. Hearing the right name for it made my chest ache and loosen at the same time. At work, I finally stopped shrinking my goals to keep someone else comfortable. I applied for a better role with a logistics firm based in Baltimore. More responsibility, better hours, a clearer path. I got it. When the offer came, I didn't post it. I didn't tell my mutual friends. I updated my budget, rebuilt my savings, and focused on consistency. Quiet success looks like bills paid early, sleep that comes without fear, weekends that belong to you. It looks like being able to sit in your own living room and feel your mind settle instead of scanning for what will hurt next. Meanwhile, the moment I removed myself from Nia's game, her whole system started wobbling. At first, she tried to replace what I provided with attention. She posted more. She went out more. She appeared at events with Jalen beside her like a trophy, dressed sharp, smiling wide, as if the goal was to prove I was the one who lost. People said she looked happy. I knew better. Happiness doesn't need witnesses every night. Performance does. And Jalen loved the stage. He was always ready for photos, always ready for a loud entrance, always ready to play the part of the man who won. I heard updates the way you hear weather, through casual comments, not direct contact. A co-worker's cousin knew Celine. An old friend ran into Nia at a salon in D.C. The story was always the same. Nia was still mocking me, still insisting I was weak, still acting like she did nothing wrong. She didn't miss me. She didn't reflect. She just repeated the narrative that protected her ego. That absence of remorse confirmed what I already knew. People who respect you don't need you to bleed so they can feel powerful. Money exposed reality faster than feelings ever did. Nia had counted on my steady contributions to keep wedding plans moving. Without my deposits, vendors demanded balances sooner. She tried to keep the Annapolis date alive by juggling credit cards and short-term loans from family. She told people I backed out and left her with a mess. She never admitted she created the mess. Then she made the decision that sealed her consequences. She trusted Jalen with her finances because she needed the story to end with her winning. Jalen pitched an investment that sounded like easy profit. He said he was launching a brand, that he had connections, that he just needed upfront money to secure inventory and marketing. He spoke in impressive terms that stayed vague, which should have been a warning. But Nia wanted to be the woman who believed in a man, the woman who inspired him. She also wanted to prove she didn't need me. So she gave him money she didn't truly have. Money borrowed from her aunt, money pulled from credit lines, money she promised she'd flip quickly. She didn't ask for clear contracts because asking would have implied doubt, and doubt would have disrupted her performance. The brand fell apart fast because it was never solid. Jalen missed meetings. He delayed paperwork. He blamed timing. When Nia asked questions, he said she was controlling. When she pushed harder, he disappeared for days. For the first time, Nia tasted the kind of uncertainty she used to feed me. She called Celine crying, and Celine told her to stay positive. Nia threatened Jalen with consequences, but he stayed calm and laughed at her panic. He treated her like an inconvenience. He wasn't sorry. He was bored. Karma didn't arrive as a dramatic scene. It arrived as noticed. First, the venue sent a final demand for payment tied to services and dates Nia insisted on. Then the photographer sent an invoice for rescheduling fees. Then her landlord posted a late rent notice because she had been shifting money to cover the wedding chaos and the investment. The same week, her credit card company reduced her limit due to missed payments. Nia drove to Jalen's apartment in Alexandria and banged on the door. When he finally answered, he shrugged and said, "You'll be fine." He didn't apologize. He didn't even pretend. Nia tried to lean on her family, but the family that watched me get humiliated didn't rescue her. Her aunt told her she couldn't keep bailing her out. Darnell said he had his own problems. Celine offered sympathy in texts, and then went out like nothing was happening. Nia's world, built on appearances and spectators, suddenly had fewer spectators. Within a month, she moved out of her Bethesda apartment and into her aunt's basement in Prince George's County, the same basement she used to joke about when talking about people who don't have it together. She still blamed me, even while carrying her boxes downstairs. Maribel called me when she heard. "I'm glad you're out," she said. There was no gloating in her voice, only relief. I stood in my Towson apartment, looking at clean counters and quiet walls, and I didn't celebrate. I breathed. That was the real reward, the ability to inhale without bracing. I went to work the next day, handled my responsibilities, and came home to a home that didn't punish me. Peace isn't loud. It's the absence of noise that used to shake you. Nia reached out once. The number was unfamiliar, but I recognized her silence before she spoke. "So you heard," she said, as if we were discussing a rumor. I didn't respond. "I need you to reverse some cancellations," she continued, controlled and entitled. "The venue is being difficult. You started this mess, so help fix it." The audacity was almost impressive. She wasn't calling to apologize. She wasn't calling to reflect. She was calling to see if I still existed in her life, as a solution she could pull off the shelf. I said no, and hung up. After that, she sent a message full of blame. She said I ruined her life. She said I was petty. She said she would never forgive me. Not once did she write, "I'm sorry for humiliating you." Not once did she mention the dinner, the months of comparisons, the constant tests. Her lack of remorse was complete. Reading her words, I felt something inside me unclench. The part of me that still wanted her to understand finally accepted she never would. Understanding requires humility, and Nia treated humility like weakness. Healing for me wasn't dramatic. It was ordinary choices made consistently. I stopped checking social media. I stopped asking mutual friends about her. I cooked again. Simple meals, the kind that remind you your life still belongs to you. I visited my mother on Saturdays and carried her groceries without feeling rushed. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected because Nia didn't like them. I replaced my old mattress because it held memories I didn't want to sleep on. I kept therapy appointments and learned how to trust my instinct again, one small decision at a time. As my life steadied, opportunities opened. The new job trusted my judgment, and I was given more responsibility. I trained a younger supervisor and watched him become confident, which reminded me that I still had something to offer besides being stable. I paid down debt faster than planned. I saved enough to start thinking about buying a small place, not for status, but for security. My success stayed quiet and private. No announcements, no speeches, just a life that got stronger because it wasn't being tested every day by someone who enjoyed watching me sweat. One afternoon, I ran into Celine at a grocery store in College Park. She greeted me with a bright smile like we were friends. "You look good," she said. "Nia talks about you sometimes." I nodded politely. Celine leaned in, voice lowering like gossip. "Things got messy," she said. "Jalen really did her wrong." I held my cart handle and met her eyes. "He did what she allowed," I said calmly. Celine's smile wavered. She didn't like that answer because it removed her favorite entertainment, a conflict with clear heroes and villains. Real life doesn't always give you that. Sometimes it gives you consequences. The truth is, I didn't want Nia to suffer. I wanted her to stop. I wanted her to become the person she pretended to be. But consequences don't consult your wishes. Consequences simply arrive. Nia's consequence was learning that games run out of players. When you treat love like a contest, you attract contestants, not partners. Jalen was a contestant. He played until the cost got real and then left the table. Nia, who always believed she was the prize, discovered that prizes can sit alone when they treat people like disposable parts. I heard later that Nia told people she chose herself and ended the engagement because I was too controlling. It was her last attempt to rewrite reality into a version where she stayed in charge. People who wanted an easy story believed it. People who knew her well nodded politely and moved on. I didn't correct anyone. I didn't need the public to understand. I needed my nervous system to calm down. I needed my life back. Silence became my boundary, and it worked. The final twist came in the most ordinary form. A letter from a collections agency tied to vendor contracts Nia signed after I left. She had tried to force the wedding into existence through pressure and appearance. Now she was facing fees, damaged credit, and the slow math of adult decisions. There was no dramatic courtroom moment, no grand humiliation in public. There was just the quiet collapse of options when you burn bridges and rely on people who don't respect you. She still told everyone she was fine. She still spoke about me like I was the villain. But behind the scenes, the numbers told the truth. One Saturday, months after the canceled Annapolis date, I drove down alone and walked along the water. I wasn't chasing closure from Nia. I was mourning the life I imagined, the version of love I tried to force into reality with patience and effort. I sat on a bench and watched boats move across the bay like they had somewhere peaceful to be. I let the grief exist without turning it into shame. Then I stood up and walked back to my car, feeling lighter. Grief is heavy, but denial is heavier. I used to think leaving meant failure. Now I understand leaving can be wisdom. Love doesn't require you to bleed to be chosen. A partner who wants you won't place you in a ring and call it test. They won't keep an ex close to sharpen your insecurity. They won't let friends mock you and call it honesty. They will protect what you build together. And if they don't, walking away is not a weakness. It is dignity. It is survival. It is choosing yourself when someone else refuses to treat you like you matter. I never saw Nia again in person, and that was part of the healing. Our chapter ended with paperwork and silence, not with apologies or emotional speeches. Her life shrank because she built it around games and spectators. Mine grew because I built it around quiet, consistent choices. My success wasn't flashy. It wasn't public. It was waking up without dread. It was laughing again without scanning the room for disrespect. It was returning to myself. Sometimes people ask if I regret leaving. They phrase it like I walked away from something valuable. I tell them the truth. I regret staying as long as I did. I regret the mornings I started with anxiety because I was trying to be enough for someone committed to making me feel insufficient. I regret the money I spent trying to purchase peace. But I don't regret leaving. Leaving gave me back my work, my family, my sleep, my confidence, and my future. It also taught me something I will never unlearn. Love that demands humiliation is not love. And when I think back to that dinner table in Arlington, the laughter, the smirk, the calm cruelty, I don't feel shame anymore. I feel gratitude. That was the night I finally saw the truth clearly. Nia didn't break my heart by leaving me. She broke it by showing me she never planned to treat it gently. The moment I removed myself from her game, my life stopped being a performance and became mine again. That is how I won. Quietly, cleanly, permanently. I keep my circle small now, and my peace protected because I remember what it cost. If you like stories where the comeback is private, strategic, and unstoppable, subscribe, because the next one is even colder. And if you made it this far, type Peace 1 in the comments, because walking away was the real victory. The end.